Hi guys and welcome to another video of Rishabh Dhanuka Gaming. Today I'm going to talk about a game known as Withering. So Wuthering Waves, or I would say, I don't know the exact naming because in some countries it's called Withering, in some countries it's in Epic Games Store it's rated as Wuthering Waves. But Wuthering Waves is a game on the Epic Games Store. It's been listed and it's gonna release pretty soon, 2024. And there's been a lot of controversy despite being an anime style arts game, like an anime style, I think, open world arts game. It's still having high specs, and today I'm gonna explain you why it's having a higher spec, why despite being a 2D, like 2D looking game, it's still having high specs. So let's talk more about it. Let me explain you why these games are high spec, why these games require more hardware than you think it requires, and I'll tell you in depth how it works. Okay, whether it's poor game optimization or it's actually the content of it. And let's start with this video and let me explain you how it is done, or how or why it's like this. If I'm gonna go to the Epic Games Store, you can see over here Wuthering Waves, or Withering in different countries as it's called. Wuthering Waves requires you to have Windows 10 64-bit or Windows 11 64-bit. So the 64-bit requirement in recent times is because the 32-bit is gonna be I would say, I don't know if it's gonna be obsolete. You can still use it if you want to, but the thing is, with the 32 and 64-bit, it's something related to computing calculations and stuff like that after a certain time, like after a certain limit. So I will make a different video of explaining why 64-bit is relevant and 32-bit is irrelevant, and is there in the future, if or recent future, is there gonna be a 128-bit version that's gonna release or not? That's a different story. But right now I'm gonna talk about the specs right now for this. So you require Windows 10 64-bit or Windows 11 64-bit because Windows 7 has officially been like discontinued. So you cannot obviously play on Windows 7 or 8, 8.1 or any version of that. So the least version you require for like security purposes and for working of various kinds of like, because since it's an like co-op game, so you require some anti-cheat or something. So I think for that, I guess you require the latest versions of Windows for security and like other patches and stuff like that. Then it requires an i5 9 gen, because usually when you think about an animated 2D game, you might think like, oh, it might require a Pentium core, like a quad core Pentium, or maybe an i3 will be the base minimum, right? No, it's not. You require a good processor. An i5 9 gen is not the best processor, but it's somewhat like a good processor. You require 16 gigs of I would say memory, like onboard memory, not the, I would say, what VRAM that is on the graphics card. You require 1060 minimum, which is I think 6 gigabytes of VRAM, and it requires 30 gigs of storage. So to give a brief context, these games that you see over here, right, they are animated art styled. So if I'm gonna explain you lightweight, for example, the game that are actually animated, let's go to the Bitcoin over here. I'm gonna go to the page and storage. These are actual 2D games because they are based on 2D environments. It's like go right, go left, go top, go bottom. So these have 4 axes. It's a 2D game. It's a single indie 2D game. And if you're gonna go for the specs of this, you see it's barely requires any specs. An Intel Pentium, Windows 7 64-bit, 4 GB of RAM, 3 GB of storage, maximum of 4 GB and 8 GB of RAM, DirectX 11, and you barely require graphics card. You can use a dedicated graphics card that's on your board itself with the processor itself, and that's it. These are actual 2D animated games. But when you're going with games like Withering Waves, it's technically the art style is 2D anime art style, but you can clearly see that like it's trying to not be super realistic with the 3D graphics, but technically, if you're gonna play this game, it is running on a 6 axis basis. So it's not only like a proper 3D game, but it feels like a 3D game. Even if you see like this skin textures over here and stuff like that, they are not completely animesque. Yes, the overall art style might look cartoony or animesque in general, but it's a full 3D model designed in a way to like this look like this completely colorful anime art style. But the whole model over here, it has skin reflections, it has this equipment reflection. You can see the metals are shining over here, so it's technically a 3D model designed in a way to look like an anime art, look in the way that an anime looks like an anime art style. So technically it's a fully fledged 3D game. And since it's an open world action RPG, for games to work as an open world action RPG, you need to able to be required to render a full world. So how big the world is depends. Okay, for games, I'm gonna show you real quick. Grand Theft Auto 5. I'm not sure if it still supports. Yeah, Grand Theft Auto 5. For games, as like this is an old game. This release in the original release for I think the PC was no, for the PS Station 3 was in 2013 or 2014 if you're in southern Southeast Asia. So for this, you see the HD requirements is quite high, although the minimum specs is quite low, because this was a big world game, so the assets were huge, so you had to download a huge amount of assets. But since the graphical art style was so not up to the level of 2020 or 2021, that it didn't require that much huge processing to actually render them. The assets were like so many assets, because it was a huge ass world where you're traveling, but the assets were comparatively low poly than today. And there was no screen reflections shared, there was no path reflection, ray tracing, and all that stuff. So the assets that have to be made were not that high caliber assets. For that reason, it doesn't require a huge amount of RAM to actually process it. With the 8 gig of RAM, you can all play it at a comfortable setting. Maybe 16 gig RAM would be more comfortable if you're playing at Ultra or something like that, because recently it was upscaled when it released on the PlayStation 5 and the PC Ultimate Edition. So in the 2020 when it released this ultimate edition, it upscaled a lot of stuff, so maybe you require 16 gigs of RAM if you're gonna play it at max settings, everything. But it doesn't require a huge ass processor when you're playing at minimal or like really low settings. It requires just an core 2 quad processor, 4 GB of RAM, a 1 GB of graphics, 1 GB graphics card. So there are multiple reasons for it. First is a very well optimized game. It only renders assets. It already like preloads all the assets, like pre-shaders preloading all the assets, but it renders only the thing that's in the scope of vision. So if you're playing a 60 FOV or 90 FOV, it's only loading things that you can see on your 90 FOV, and like anything that's beyond it, it will make the poly count so low that you don't have to render it at a higher quality, so you can still see stuff that are at a distance, but with a low poly count. And the stuff that near to you in that radius of 90 FOV or 60 FOV, it's loading at a very low, like high poly, and the stuff that are very like beyond it are low, that are very low poly. And for that, you have to like, Rockstar has built their own engine. It doesn't use Unreal Engine or any other engine for it. It has built its own engine for GTA 5, and for that reason, GTA 5 can load at it. But games like these probably use Unreal Engine or some kind of pre-made engines, because I don't know if Games is a big developer or not. But it's an online controller supported or open world action adventure RPG, somewhat like I think Genshin Impact. But Genshin Impact is more online based. I'm not sure if this gonna be always online based thing, if it's gonna require a anti-cheat engine or not. Anti-cheat engine also creates another problem. It takes up a small amount of RAM as well, so that's also the issue, that you require higher RAM. And I think the world is well made, although despite being anime-ish design, like a 2D-ish design, it's technically a 3D world, and the characters are also 3D. And there I can see space screen reflections, or maybe it has ray tracing. I'm not sure if it has ray tracing, I have no confirmation about it, but it definitely has screen space reflections and all this stuff. And and the other assets over here, you can see this glowing, it has high polygon. So I'm not sure how good the well optimization is. I think that's one of the reason it requires you a higher RAM and big and a 6 GB graphics card, because in the 6 GB of graphics, uh it will preload all the assets that you're required to play. For example, in this battle that it's showing over here, you require a lot of assets for when which location you'll be standing, what FOV you will have, so it will preload the whole arena while you're fighting in a particular area. So that for that, it's requiring 6 GB of VRAM, and RAM is and it also requires 16 GB of VRAM, because you have to continuously process what you're doing, and like trying to like what your next action will be. Will you go out of the zone? Will you go inside the zone? If you will die? And I think 6 GB of RAM might be too much for even for a 3D game. Even if it's anime style, I think it shows a lack of optimization in my regards. But most of these games are like that. Even I would say like Genshin is a big game. Genshin has included a lot of island and stuff like that. So I guess Genshin at this point requires 100 GB of storage. If I'm gonna show you here, it requires 100 GB of storage, because it has made build up a huge world. It's, I think, equivalently big as GTA. So it is as big as GTA right now, the world. So I guess it requires a huge thing. But even Genshin, you can see the minimum is 8 GB, because it's, even if it's continuously rendering the game, it's not I would say not loading a lot of assets. The base assets are mostly loaded on the onboard storage, whether it's an SSD or whether it's a HDD. HDD makes it even slower, so most people prefer SSDs these days, or even SATA SSDs for that matter. But that's that. Even this requires a 1030. I think 1030 is 4 GB. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but 1060 is definitely 6 GB. I don't know why exactly it requires 6 GB. Maybe it's super high graphics, and even the lowest graphics is not that, like, it's even if I think even the lowest graphics requires a lot of processing and stuff like that, why it requires 6 GB of VRAM. I'm not exactly sure how well the game is made, and how beautiful the game will look. I mean, according to the pictures and this video, I think it is very promising and very good looking game. But I don't see it being any better than Scarlet Nexus or Genshin Impact. It kind of resembles Scarlet Nexus in a lot of regards, mainly the protagonist. I'm not sure if Scarlet Nexus is here on Epic Games, so I don't think, yeah, Scarlet Nexus is not here. So even Scarlet Nexus didn't require that huge of a graphics like stuff. I can justify the latest processor, because it's a high polygon game. It's an open world game, and modern open world games require high specs. 16 gigs of RAM, I can still justify in some regards if you're playing on high settings. But for minimum settings, I don't think 60 GB of RAM is justifiable. And 1060, I guess it's okay, because I don't know how big of the world this game has, and how well the optimization is. Maybe it has poor optimization, because even GT has a bigger world, but it has well optimized uh like game engine. Because technically it made its own game engine. It is a big company. It's not an indie company or double A company. It's a triple A big multi-corp studio, so you can afford to have a game engine made for themselves, which is pretty good. So I guess the game engine is not that super made, or it's a pre-made game engine that they are using, maybe an Unreal Engine or some kind of other engine that is available in the market. So I guess for that it is not well optimized, and it requires 1060. And 30 gigs is, I think, kind of okayish, because assets require 30 gigs these days, because it's an open world RPG. It will have a lot of assets, many multitude of cities, characters, and lightings and all that stuff, reflections and stuff. So I guess it justifies that. But I cannot justify the 6 GB minimum and the 1060 minimum. But that's me talking. I've not played the game, neither have seen any gameplay or trailer. I just see this trailer, which has like little bit of gameplay. I have to see this is a work in progress. I need to see a full-fledged 15 minutes or 10 minutes gameplay to really analyze if this is a pre-processed gameplay, or if it's actually someone playing it and testing it and uploading it for, and what specs they are using. So I have to check for that, and I have to see if it's actually well optimized, or this is just shitty optimization. or this game is actually having some good graphics. We'll know when this game launches. Anyways, I've yapped too much right now and I've talked too much. Hope you like this video, found this video informative, and if you want more breakdowns like this, do subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification if you want to get notified on future videos. Like the video if you like it, dislike the video if you dislike it. We'll meet soon in the next video. Till then, peace out.